living proof that you can live with a chronic illness and still do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's scary, and you get quite a lot of fear.
I can't get stressed, because if I get stressed, I get ill.
Looking after like your mental health and doing things that you enjoy.
Let's talk about chronic illness.
So this is episode 1 of Let's Talk About Chronic Illness, and today we're talking about fear and mental health, and I have a very lovely guest with me today, Cody. So can you please introduce yourself?
And so I'm Cody, I'm 19, I'm a student nurse, but I live with a chronic illness. I have a condition called Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease which affects your digestive system and cause inflammation in your bowels, and cause blockages, tears, and it's quite painful when it flares up, and it has a lot of other things linked with it, like fatigue. I suffer with hair loss, again, pain, sickness.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Becca, I'm 19, I'm ill with chronic illness called ME, which stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis. And it's also known as chronic fatigue syndrome, so it causes fatigue, pain, muscle weakness, and a variety of other things. So you just mentioned about hair loss. So that's actually something that I've also struggled with in the past. I think definitely sort of mentally that's difficult, is sort of worrying about what people are going to think, and
you think yourself as well. You look at yourself and you're thinking, like, do I really look like this? Is this going to change? Like, and you don't think about the fact of in the future that it's going to grow back. It's just in the time being, like, I've got bald spots, my hair's falling out, and for the social norm, it's like it's not normal.
And I suppose that's actually sort of the same with a lot of like the symptoms that we have. It's sort of like you're not really thinking about how it might improve in the future or anything. It's just like in the moment there's quite a lot of like fear and anxiety and a lot of feelings that go around with that, sort of around how you feel about yourself, but also sort of what other people are going to think of you. And
definitely.
So I've had some people send in some stuff on social media. So discussion point, which someone said, was when medical professionals say they are unable to help you.
The biggest eye roll you can ever think of. There's nothing more we can do, or we don't really know what to do next.
Or even sort of, I don't know about with you, but for me it was sort of like we didn't really know what caused it. There's not really that much known about it. So a lot of medical professionals, some of them haven't.
It's a lot of years of it's a years of misdiagnosis. So I went, how many years? I think I went 6 years misdiagnosed.
Really?
Because it was such a hard thing to diagnose. So when you're younger, the tests for Crohn's disease involved a test called a colonoscopy, where they take a camera and view your colon, basically. And as a child, you don't really want to put a kid through that. So they try and do every other test they can. So I was diagnosed with gastroenteritis, it's IBS, it's just loads of different stuff until they actually diagnosed. And when there was an actual diagnosis, it was a case of there's not actually a cure, and being told that there's not actually a cure was like, it was so scary, because it was like, them saying there's not a cure makes you think it's going to be exactly like this for the rest of my life. It's going to get better, or you can get into a remission and there's just not a cure. You'll always have it, but you can be in remission. And you don't think that when there's not a cure. It's just like, I'm literally going to be on death's door for the rest of my life. Really draining.
When you hear that there's like not much they can do, it's like terrifying. Suddenly be like, so is this it then, like for the rest of my life? I've always been scared of not getting better.
I think it's like a thing, really, because you think, if I get better, what's life going to be like? Everything's and you're so fast.
You just can't imagine life without it.
And that's what I say, like, obviously it's not nice having a chronic illness, but it's still part of you. You wouldn't be you without it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's like another thing, because sometimes you get people that sort of tell you like, oh well, don't let it define you, don't let it be part of you. But it's like, but it is.
Yeah. It doesn't. True. It doesn't define you. Like, you can still live life with chronic illness. It's like,
Yeah.
I always thought from when I first got it, I was like, I'm never going to be able to dance again because of
Mhm.
how much pain I'd be and how tired I'd be, and I'm not going to be able to dance, and I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to do that, but I'm not going to be able to work. I'm never going to get my dream job. And I'm obviously living proof that you can live with a chronic illness and still do what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, you don't want the illness to like become like who you are, but it is still a part of it. So sort of finding the right balance between sort of still trying to live your life as best as you can, but still like kind of acknowledging that things are different with illness, if that makes sense.
And it's the fact of, like, obviously I didn't come to terms with the fact I was ill for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite a hard one, but it got to a point where it was like, when I finally came to terms with it, then you had the people saying you're faking, or it was like, oh, it's not that bad, you get a bit of my best favourite line is just a bit of a stomach ache. So I have had incidents at school where I've been in that much pain I passed out at school, and I've had people say like, oh, you walk to the medical room, you're completely fine. I'm like, okay, just, you get to a point where you just don't give in to them. It's like, whatever, okay, just you
Yeah,
do you.
yeah.
It's lack of information and knowledge as well. So obviously chronic illnesses, a lot of them are hidden, and you can be fine 1 minute and the next minute you'd be literally killed over in pain, and they're like,
Yeah,
how? And unless you're living with it, you can't ever truly understand.
yeah, that's absolutely 100% true. Like with me, I get really annoyed when people are like, oh well, it's just a little bit tired, just a bit tired, just need to get more rest. I'm like, no.
You can get as much rest as you want, but
Yeah,
it doesn't
it doesn't.
mean anything. It's the pain from the fatigue and stuff as well. Like, it's not just I'm tired, it's my whole body is tired.
Mm-hmm. It's like a painful exhaustion.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I sort of struggle with mentally as well, is when people sort of like downplay it because they don't understand it, then it's so frustrating, because it's like, I just want people to understand it, or at least sort of like appreciate how hard it is, but people just don't get it.
Yeah, it's one of them really, where you'd want them to understand it and you'd want them to experience it, but you're also sat there thinking, I'd never want anyone to have to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Difficult. And then you have obviously your family see it from their point of view, but then they don't always, they don't see it from our point of view,
mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
then we don't see it from their point of view, so it's really hard to comprehend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
You try to play it down, like obviously everyone with illness will do it, you'll try and play it down, you'll act as if nothing's wrong for God knows how long,
mm-hmm.
to a point of, I've been on FaceTime to my friend Lauren at 2 o'clock in the morning, knowing full well I need to be in hospital, but I'm sat there thinking, give me a couple of hours, I'll see how the next hour goes, I'll see how the next hour goes. And she's like, no, like, clearly not okay. But then you try and put that front on, which puts a wall up, but that makes people think, oh, well, she's all right then, she seems all right, when you can like pretend to be all right but not be.
And people sort of think that you're faking it and stuff, and it's like, I'm not faking being ill, I'm faking being well.
Yeah, it's hard because, again, I couldn't see my life without it, but then there's also times going, oh my god, get rid of it, I never want to see you again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's like,
It's hard being our age as well,
mm-hmm.
because of, like, when I first got Crohn's I was 13, so I was going through, so I was still like at the start of my secondary school journey, so I
Yeah,
had to go through GCSEs and stuff, and I bet obviously you did too, didn't you,
yeah,
with your school stuff, and had to go through your exams at school with like, I'll be in hospital, or I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's happening now, I'm in school, I'm also trying to do my exams, then getting stressed, which is making me more ill,
yeah,
putting me back in hospital, and then I'm even more stressed because I'm not in school revising.
yeah,
And it's one of to balance everything, and no one sees what goes on behind closed doors. Like at home, your family see you at home, at school your school sees you at school, but you see them both together.
yeah, 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 definitely. And I almost find, like, even when I go to like hospital appointments and stuff, if it's just like an appointment rather than an admission, like, you're only seeing the like medical professional for like what, like
Mhm.
half an hour. So that doesn't even really give a very clear indication of like how your symptoms are. Like, you can tell them, but they
Yeah,
can't.
I know you always get paranoid then. You always think, oh, they're going to think I'm faking because I'm okay now. but in an hour's time I might not be.
Yeah.
It's like they see the patient, not the person. I think from being ill myself and seeing it on the other hand, it's like I need to see the person as well as the patient, because this person could come to me and be completely fine, but in extreme pain inside.
Yeah.
So like they wouldn't. It's like one of them. No one can ever put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
Because it's like they've all got a different piece, but you are literally the whole thing.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. So I'm looking at some of the other things that people sent in. So another one was the fear when your health is dipping and you don't know if it's temporary or not. Yeah, there is like a lot of fear around sort of going through like a bit of a crash. So like if for people with ME, like when we're having a flare up, we tend to refer to it as a crash. So yes, like if I'm going through like a bit of a crash, then it's sort of thinking, okay, but is this like just a crash that is going to last like a few days or a few weeks, or is this like the whole thing getting worse and not going to get better? So yeah, it's scary, and yeah, you get quite a lot of fear around like, is this just like a temporary flare up, or am I just like getting worse?
Yeah, I think for us it's a case of like, if I'm in a flare, it's more of a considering, am I in a flare because I'm inflamed, or have I got a bowel perforation? Have I got a blockage? Am I going to need emergency surgery? Is this it? Because if there's a chance that I could go into a flare up and it be a bowel perforation or a bowel blockage or a twist in my bowel, and if it's any of them things and it is severe and they can't treat it with antibiotics or steroid medication, you could end up having surgery to have part of your bowel removed.
Okay.
It's one of them. You can't ever judge the symptoms. You have to like take it all as okay, this could be the worst case scenario, or am I going to go in and they're going to give me some steroids and I'll be out of hospital the next day? And I judged that wrong the last time, and it was a blockage, and I was in for 6 days. Wow. But I was sat there at home thinking, no, it's fine. It'll go in a couple. Like I'll be able to cope myself at home. I need to go in bed to take my medication, and I just ended up being rushed into hospital at 2:00 in the morning to be rushed into scans and stuff to say you've got a blockage. You always think the worst, because if you don't, then you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. You sort of have to like hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
Because like you just don't know. Yeah, you have to be really good at judging your symptoms.
Yeah, it's like most people with chronic illnesses have a really high pain threshold as well. It's like, so I'll be judging my pain like it's not that bad, but then someone will be looking at me being like, oh my god, you look like you were on death's door. But because you're so used to it, you're just like, okay, let me just deal with it myself.
Yeah.
I might tell you if it's bad, but just don't overreact, and you have to make sure everyone around you. I feel like if I'm going in a flare up, I'm spending more time keeping everyone else around me calm than I am myself.
Yeah. I'm the exact same. Like, yeah, if I'm really struggling, like if I'm in a lot of pain, my mum, my sister, or someone will be sort of looking really worried and stuff, and so I'm there like in loads of pain, but just saying it's fine, I'm going to be okay. It's just
like you're on the phone, like someone's on the phone to an ambulance, and they're like, oh my god, like what do I do? What do I do? And then you're just like, it's fine, just breathe. I'm like calming them down. Well, I'm like, I'm literally in so much pain, but you're screaming your head off, panicking. I'm like, I'm fine, just fine.
And like when other people are sort of panicking, it makes you panic more. It's just like it's just sort of a bit of like a vicious circle, really, isn't it? Because it's like they're panicking, which making you panic, which then probably makes them panic even more. And then it's like,
for me, stress is a big one for a flare. So like when I was doing my exams and stuff, I don't think there was a day when I did my exams when I actually wasn't in pain. But it's like stress is a big one. So if people around me I'm stressed, I'm like, oh, I can't get stressed, because if I get stressed, I get ill. Or I stress more because I'm ill.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like I have to live in a Buddhist world of Zen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, because it's like being stressed and being worried is so exhausting that it then sort of makes all my symptoms worse. But then I'm stressing more because my symptoms bad, and it's like you just can't like get out of that. Definitely I get a lot of fear around like doing activities I wouldn't usually do and stuff. I'm sort of constantly sort of wanting to do them, but then also thinking, well, what happens if it causes me to go backwards causes
Me
me
with a lot of
worse.
food. That's me with a lot of food. So if like we're going out somewhere to eat that I haven't eaten before, and I'm reading the menu and I'm like, I haven't tried that before, but if I eat it, is it going to mix with something that's going to make me ill? And I have such a fear over foods, and then you're thinking like, oh, I'm stressing. You catch yourself stressing every now and again, and you're like, right, calm down. And then you go for I always go for the safer option on the menu. I'm like, I'll have that.
Yeah. I feel like that's sort of what I do. Yeah, just sort of like day-to-day activities. Like, for example, yesterday I was going to go out for a drive with my sister. It was doing like the second time that I've been out in a car in like a year and a half. So we were going to go in the car, and it was sort of like, do we do the drive, which I've already done once, so I know I'll be okay, or do we try and go a bit further? And it's sort of like sort of the fear of, if we go a bit further, is it going to have a really bad knock-on effect? We did decide to go with the slightly further option. I regretted it afterwards because I felt really unwell, but it's like sometimes you do just have to try things. If you don't try it, then you won't know. But yeah, it's sort of like getting that balance between trying things but also not like taking loads of risks that are gonna, which you know are gonna like cause you to have a flare up or get worse and stuff. So
it's a little bit like me. So if I went out to somewhere to eat, I have a really bad thing with like corn, and like corn and red meats are my two big foods that make me flare. So it'd be like me going to a restaurant and be like, oh, I'll have a sweet corn, I'll have a steak, and I'm like, I know for a fact that's going to make me ill, so I won't do it. But then, do I try it? Do I not? It's one of them. Like I'm gonna completely regret it, but I did it anyway. I wouldn't have done that one, but like, yeah.
And I think sometimes also it's like you sort of have to get like the balance between looking after yourself physically and looking after your health, but then also looking after like your mental health and doing things that you enjoy, which may or may not have a negative impact on your physical health. If you know they're going to have like a positive impact on your mental health because it's something that you enjoy, then it's sort of like judging that.
That's me with dancing. So I always found that a lot of the time before I started back at dance, I was ill more, but I also didn't want to go back to dance because I didn't want the stress of being like, oh, I need to remember this, do I need to remember that, have I got this, have I got that, and having the stress of that making me more ill. But I took that challenge and went, I'm going to start back, and I'll just start like a class a week and just see how it goes. And that was like over a year ago, and I've not looked back since. I've actually felt that I'll use that as a big stress relief, and I'll flare less because I'm dancing, because it's my way of releasing my stress.
Sometimes
you have to take the risk.
I think absolutely, you just sometimes have to go for it, and just like starting with like one class a week. I think that's really good, sort of just like dipping your toe in a bit and like just seeing how it goes and just gradually building it up, rather than like suddenly being like, oh, I'm just going to go to dance lessons every single day.
I do 3 a week now.
Okay.
Like if I'd have threw myself in that at the start, I'd have been like, oh my god, I've done 3 classes this week, I am not going to cope for the next month. But I went from 1 to 2 and then to 3. So it was a gradual incline. It was like, I can do it now.
That's a really good example. It's just sort of, you got to like think, well, I really, really enjoy this, so just going to try it and just see how it's
slowly. So before I started actually going to classes, I was doing them online.
Okay.
So I was watching YouTube videos of how to do, say, a cha-cha basic. And then I was like, I'm okay doing this, I might try and do a class. Did a class and was like, okay, this was fine this week, I'm going to go back next week and see how it is. And then after about 3 months, I was like, I'm going to do another one. So I booked private lessons. So it was just a one-on-one. And then after a couple of weeks, then I was like, okay, I feel fine, I'm going to go up. And then my dance teacher said to me, are you okay if you move up to the intermediate class from the beginners? So I was like, okay, we'll tried it, and it was fine. So it was like just slowly introducing it instead of throwing yourself in it all at once.
Are your dance teachers quite understanding, like, of Crohn's and stuff?
Yeah, so my dance teachers are very understanding, purely for the fact of one of the principals that dance at our school has it as well. The school are very understanding because a lot of the teachers are related and friends and stuff with the teacher that suffers with it. So they're very, very understanding.
Oh, that's really good then. So when you were in school, did you struggle with like teachers at school being understanding?
Yeah, a lot. That was one of my biggest So my school teachers were just very. I have my leavers shirt from school. My teacher actually wrote on it "My Drama Queen," because I was always ill, I was always injured, and I was clumsy, but I was clumsy because I was always tired.
Mm-hmm.
And we realise that now, but when I was at school, obviously we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But they were always just like, "Oh, you're fine, just get on with it, just you're all right." And then, like, so if there was incidents where I'd be in that much pain, I'd pass out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happened about 4 times in my last 2 years of school.
Wow.
So I'd be in that much pain, I'd pass out, and they'd just be like, "Get up, you're fine," or just stand up, or we'll take you down to medical. Or my teachers had this thing of, if you pass out, it's because you haven't eaten, and they'll throw a sandwich at you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not actually because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just one of them. It was lack of understanding and lack of knowledge of it. So they were just like,
Yeah.
obviously it's no fault of theirs. They were just going with what they know. And then because of that, you'd have the impact from the pupils being like, "Oh, you're faking it."
Mm-hmm.
Or just, "Are you for real? What are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just get to the point where you're like, I just don't want to explain it anymore.
Yeah, I found when I was in year 12, doing like first year of A levels, that was when sort of my ME definitely began to decline and begin to get quite a bit worse, and I was missing quite a few of my lessons because of it. Or like I would go into a lesson, but then after like 10 minutes be like, "No, I can't sit here, like I'm too exhausted."
It's not sitting as well, it's having to focus on things, having to try and keep yourself like, I've got, and it's the putting the front on. It's like wearing the mask. You have to put a lot of energy into making yourself look okay.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I would sort of have to like leave lessons, or I wouldn't go to lessons, and I'd have teachers saying, "Oh well, it's just because you don't like the subject." And it's like, but it's my A levels, I've chosen these subjects.
Yeah.
Of course I like it. It's just, oh yeah, hated that. So another thing was when you're in a lot of pain or have a lot of symptoms and emotionally it wears you down.
Mm-hmm.
So I find myself getting very frustrated at my body, like so much of the time. Like if I'm in a lot of pain or I'm really worn out, and I'm just like, why do I feel like this? And it's sort of like you want to cry, but you're too tired. Like
it makes you feel weak as well. Like not just weak as in, oh, my body's weak. It makes you feel mentally weak because you're like, I find myself a lot of the time, I'm so guilty of this. Every time I'm in a flare up, the one thing I'll always say is, "I can't do this anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes you feel like I'm not strong enough to fight through. You always do end up coming out the other side, like, "Look at me, I'm still here."
Mm.
But it's just in that moment, in that time, you're like, "It's happening again."
Yeah.
Like I can't do it anymore. I feel exhausted. I'm not worth fighting for anymore, because you have that mental drain of thinking, look at the effect it's having on people around you. My family are having to, like, my mum will have to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning ringing ambulances, or I'll be like, she'll have to ring an ambulance, find some childcare for my nephews and stuff. And it's like, she's like, it's like the effect it has on everyone else. I'm like, you makes you feel like you're not worth the help.
Yeah. I often like feel like I'm a burden.
Yeah.
On like my family and stuff, and it's just, yeah, and it's like I feel like there's quite a lot of pressure on people who have chronic illnesses to be strong and be positive like all the time, and it's like, actually it's okay not to be.
Yeah, it's like, you've got to be strong at the end of the day. Like, you have to have strength. Anyone with chronic illness has strength. I don't care what anyone says, they do.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, like, it's also okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
You're all right to have a few days where, not even just a few days, have a month, have like a year, do whatever you need to do, but it's okay to not be all right with it.
Yeah.
It's all right to be, it's all right to take them days for yourself to rest and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's just making sure that you don't like let that sort of pressure from society to like be really strong and be like fighting and everything. It's okay to just have a couple of days where you're not, just as long as you need. Like, yeah, and like sometimes I'll find that like I'll be really struggling with stuff, and I'll like sort of like be really honest with my friend or something and say I'm really struggling, and they go, "Oh, but you're so strong and you're so positive." And it's like, sometimes it's okay just to sort of, if someone is really struggling, just say, "You are really strong, but you don't have to be strong like right now?
Yes, I am strong, but at this current minute, I'm not, because I don't need to be.
Yeah, you don't need to be strong and putting on that front of being really positive and being like, oh yeah, I'm really strong and fighting this illness all the time. Like, it's okay, it's okay not to be okay.
That's a big stigma about mental health to do with chronic illnesses. Of people say, like, oh, you fight it every day though, you've got to be okay. You get used to it. Like, yes, you do get used to it, but you don't at the same time. And I can never explain that one, because you don't understand unless you are going through something. It's like, you can't fully understand what I go through, and I can't fully understand what you go through, because we do have different symptoms and we do have different chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
And like, but that's also like me thinking of another person that's suffering with Crohn's. I don't understand what they go through, because it's their own journey. That word, journey, but it's their own battle with it, whereas this, obviously your own battle is different to someone else's with the same thing, because of your environmental factors as well.
Yeah,
you can just don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could just chat a little bit about like accepting illness, and sort of like the mental factors of having to accept and like come to terms with being ill, which is definitely something that I've sort of struggled with. I know you sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier, so do you want to talk a bit about that? Or
so obviously being diagnosed with any illness, whether it's chronic, whether it's not chronic, whether it's just anything, being diagnosed with anything, it's hard. And like, I was very in denial when I was diagnosed. It was like, no, like, I don't have this, or I do. Obviously I knew I did, but it was almost as if I didn't speak about it, it wasn't real. But then you come to a part when you're like, no matter what, it's still there, and if you feel like this, someone else has got to feel like it as well. And it was when someone I look up to quite highly came out of the fact that they had it, and I was just like, what? And it made you realise that if they can do it, why can't I? And it doesn't define, again what we said earlier, it doesn't define you, but it does at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, but if I'm struggling to come to terms with it, and I don't understand it myself, there's got to be other people out there that are also feeling the same. So by me coming to terms with it myself and speaking out about it, it might encourage other people to as well.
Yeah.
It's just one of them, you have to just bite the bullet and just get on with it, because no matter what you do, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, that's so true. I've sort of, because I've been ill 4 years. I definitely find that even like still now, I do struggle to fully accept it, and sometimes I'll just try and forget about it, and then I'll go and do something and be like, oh yeah,
I can't do that.
necessarily do that, because and it's just and then sort of you just get to a point where you're like, you know what, other people are probably feeling the same way that I am, and sort of trying to find the positives from being ill, and like being like, well, if I speak up about it, then it will make, even if it just makes like one other person feel less alone.
I mean, if it changes one person's life, then you've done enough. You've done something to help someone.
And that's sort of like why I started my YouTube channel, and why I wanted to do this series, is because I thought, like, there's so many people who are going to be feeling like they can't accept it, that they're never going to be able to do anything, sort of everything that we sort of talked about in this video, but then they might watch this and think, oh, they're going through the same thing. And like with you're now a student nurse, and you're managing to like go to dance with 3 times a week and stuff. And I think that it just sort of gives people a bit of reassurance.
It's almost like, so the way I see it is, when I was at college, again, I hadn't come to terms with it very well when I first started, and when I had, like, after a while, there was another girl in my group who she was never in. Obviously I was never in as it was, but like the very, very odd days when we'd both be in. And obviously she didn't know why I was off, I didn't know why she was off. And when I started talking about why I was actually like never in college, I spoke to her. And so Crohn's is under a category called inflammatory bowel disease, and there's another condition called ulcerative colitis, which falls under the same category. And when we started speaking about it, I found out that she had ulcerative colitis. But I think if I hadn't have came to terms with my own illness and spoke about it, I would have never known that. and she would have never known that either. And it's kind of helped to know that there's someone else in the same class that actually understands to an extent. And without us both coming to terms with it, neither of us would have had that support from each other.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, has chronic illness changed your outlook on life?
Makes you more grateful.
Absolutely.
Makes you more grateful to be alive, because I've seen people that suffer with the same illness as me be in a much worse situation. And it makes you more grateful to think of, there's been times when there's been a chance that I couldn't be here anymore, but I am, and there's a reason for it, so I'm going to make my life as worthwhile as I can. I want to do everything I want to do, because there's people out there that can't.
I think it makes you appreciate like the simplest things.
Oh God.
Like,
Food, it makes you appreciate.
Yeah, because I basically didn't go outside at all for I think a year or so. I was bedbound, and then the first time that I went outside, it was like magical. Like, that's because it's just like, it was just the simplest things, like feeling the wind like in your hair and on your face, and like seeing the sky and hearing like traffic and birds and everything. That's such like a thing that you just take for granted. You just don't take anything for granted.
There's a lot of people that live with Crohn's as well who have NG feeds. They're like the tubes that go from the nose into the stomach, or from the stomach directly in. And I think, like, if anyone ever has to experience that, but then gets rid of the tube and then is actually able to, so you can eat and drink with the tube, but there's only certain ways you have to see a speech and language therapist to be able to work out whether you've got enough esophageal room and stuff like that, you're able to drink and stuff. But it's like, don't take for granted the little things like being able to eat, or being able to eat anything and not make you ill.
Yeah, for me it's like, don't take for granted like the fact that you can walk, or like the fact that you can just like go out whenever you want, and like stay out as late as you want without having to worry too much about the consequences. I think definitely just sort of, you learn not to take anything for granted, and just to
appreciate what you've got.
And just sort of live life to the best that you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's the awareness that matters the most.
Yeah,
people can't understand what it's like to live with, but they can understand the textbooky kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you educate yourself, you have a better understanding.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah, definitely. I'm going to put some links in the description of this video for, like, I'm going to put a link to, is there a Crohn's and Colitis UK website?
Yeah, I'll send you the link for it.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that. I'll put a link to the ME Association website, so people can go and click on the links and find out a bit more about the condition. Because I think that is the key thing. It's just education.
Definitely. Don't let it control your life. Be grateful for what you've got and appreciate everyone, and realise that just because when you look at someone, just because they look okay, they might not be. So just take a couple of ask, are you okay? How are you? How are you doing today? That could be one question that stems someone completely like opening up about something that suppressed them for so long.
Yeah, and it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And as we said many times in this video, don't let illness define you, but do sort of accept it as part of who you are.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Cody, for joining for this first episode.